Welcome to Heart Awakening series. Tonight we have a very important guest. His name is Patrick SCHWERDTFEGER. Did I say that right?
Nicely done, Patricia.
Thank you very much. I practiced and practiced. Patrick is the author of Marketing Shortcuts for the Self-Employed, and he is an international keynote speaker. We're very happy to have Patrick here. He is visiting us from California. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
And we're so excited that you're here with us to share your story with us.
Story.
Yes.
We all have a story, don't we?
We all have a story to tell.
It's a journey.
So I would like to know, how did you get to this, to becoming an international keynote speaker?
You know, a lot of times, you get started, you don't know where you're going to end up, and that was the case with me. I mean, I tried a lot of different things, and I failed at more than half of them. I mean, you try a lot of things, and a lot of them just don't work out the way you anticipate. And it was in the midst of a whole bunch of those failures. I had kind of a whole string of them, and I was really struggling and trying to find my way. And I remember one time in particular, I was searching on the internet. I thought I should speak at a conference, and I'd never done it before. I mean, I didn't even know what was required. But I searched for internet marketing. That's what I was really focused on, internet marketing at the time. So I searched for internet marketing conference, and it turns out there actually is a conference called the Internet Marketing Conference, so it came right up. But it was a conference based in Stockholm, Sweden.
Wow.
And I thought, boy, I mean, that's not really what I had in mind. But they had a tab it was all in English, and they had a tab that said speakers, and I clicked on it, and then there was another page talking about the requirements, and it said submit a proposal. It was a link that I could click that said submit a proposal. So now I'm looking at this form, this online form, where I could fill in my proposal. And I literally, I mean, I had, this was a Thursday evening, I'll never forget. I had a beer on my desk, I was frustrated, I was broke. I mean, I didn't know, what to do. But I came up with a great title that night. And titles are super important. If you want to become a speaker one day, if that's something that's in your, your future dreams, the title of your program is super important. And I came up with a great title that night. It was called Monetizing Trust, Leading Your Audience from Rapport to Revenue.
Perfect.
Which was a great title.
Great title.
And I've had some horrible titles. So this is a nice change. Anyway, I pressed submit. I didn't expect to hear anything. It was a Thursday night. So Friday I didn't hear anything, and then the weekend I didn't hear anything. And I woke up on Monday morning, and there was an email in my inbox. Came in at 2 o'clock in the morning, which is the middle of the day in Sweden, right? And it said, we're interested in your topic. And I was like, oh boy. So I was scared to death.
So did you have something prepared or something in mind when you came up with this topic?
No, I didn't. No. That's the funny, this is the story of my life. I kind of just put things out there because most of what you do fails anyway. So you can get mired in the paralysis of analysis or whatever. There's a saying where people get mired setting everything up before they launch, and I totally disagree. You just got to jump. You just got to try it, and most of the time you can figure out what you're going to say afterwards. Which maybe is not the professional way to do it, but you just save a lot more time because so many of the things you try, they don't work anyway. So anyway, I started emailing back and forth. This guy's name was Leonard Svanberg. You can't make this stuff up, right? It's a brilliant name. Great guy. He's a good friend of mine to this day. And we started emailing back and forth, and there was some hiccups along the way, but sure enough, 3 months later, I ended up going to Sweden, and I spoke over there, and I was scared. I was scared to death. I was so freaked out by the whole thing. But when I got there, Leonard told me that I was the only American who submitted a proposal. Right? Think about this, right? So this is, I learned such a huge lesson. The hardest place to get paid to speak is in your own backyard. And meanwhile, no one else, I had no competition. Because I went out to Sweden, right? When you look beyond what's realistic, like when you think not just a little bit bigger, but way bigger, right? You just completely 10x your goals. Just think way bigger. You end up not having that much competition because everyone's too busy chasing realistic goals, right? We all have these realistic goals, and people so there's tons of competition for that. Everyone in your space, they're all trying to do the same thing you're doing. But if you go beyond that and think something way bigger, and there's been a whole bunch of different examples of this that different people in my circle, because I've become really passionate about this. It's an area that I think is really like thinking bigger and kind of the domino effect that starts when you think bigger in life. So I've asked a lot of people I know who have done similar things, and it's always the same. They don't have a lot of competition. And then when I got back from Sweden, I got more credibility at home because I spoke in Sweden.
Right. Makes sense.
Like I got it in both directions.
Mm-hmm.
So I started, I started sending marketing all over and now, I send marketing to Kuala Lumpur and Johannesburg and Santiago, Chile and Moscow and most of the things I tried, they didn't work out. I mean, I sent tons of marketing material out. A lot of it I never heard anything back from. But every now and again, here's what happens, right? You send some stuff out, and all of a sudden one thing comes through, and you're lucky to get that. I mean, arguably, luck is, hard work and luck are correlated. Okay?
Yes.
But eventually something comes through, and you're freaked out like crazy and scared to death. More than likely, at least I was. And so then you go and do that thing, but then you capture, something I say all the time, you have to add permanence to everything you do. If you go off and do anything, right? Speaking of Sweden is my example. I got photos, I got video of it, I got quotes, testimonials, and then you add that stuff to your website, and slowly but surely you just keep adding more and more and more and more and more stuff, and it grows and grows, and it becomes overwhelming to a point where the next people who come to your website tomorrow and next week and next month and next year, they see all that stuff at once. They don't know it took 5 years to get it. Like, you might have been broke, living on roots and berries for that whole time, just getting one victory every 4 months and starving the other 3 months in the middle. But when you keep stacking on your website, there's a cumulative effect, right? So it ends up becoming so overwhelming that a first-time visitor who gets to your site at that point, they're just like, wow,
this guy's great.
This person's done all this stuff. And it's true. Like I've never tried to, there's never been any deception or anything like that. Everything on my website is exactly what it was. But it took, probably 6 years in 2007 was when that Sweden thing happened. Now it's 2013. That's 6 years. And things are really going well now. In fact, I'm going to Moscow. I'm going to Bangkok in 2 weeks. I'm going to Moscow after that in the Philippines. So I'm travel a lot, and it's super fun. I love what I do. I love what I do, right?
So tell me a little bit about that. You love communicating with people. You love giving your message. What is your message for the world?
Well, it's what we're talking. That's why I wanted to be a part of this, because it's what we're talking about. It's the fact that anyone can do this.
Right.
And so, I mean, is it redundant to say that my message is that everyone has a message? I mean, in a way, that's what it is. Mm-hmm. But one thing I've always people have a hard time finding their purpose in life sometimes. And they don't, and I've had people ask me, they're like, I just don't know what my purpose is or what my passion is. And I always tell them the same thing. I always say, follow the questions, right? Like when people, it's interesting, if someone asks you a question, they're telling you two things, right? First, they're telling you that they're interested in whatever they're asking you about, okay? Or else they wouldn't ask. Secondly, they think you have the answer. Right? Like they wouldn't ask you if they didn't think you have the answer.
Yes.
And so, every one of us, we all have our own individual personalities, and whether we realize it or not, we shine in certain areas. So if you look into your life and think, just ask yourself, what questions do people always ask you? What's the area in your life where people are constantly asking you about subject X or subject Y or subject Z, whatever it is? That's probably where your purpose is, because people naturally gravitate to you on that subject. And you can stay up all night long trying to figure out why. Who cares? Like, you have a natural gift in that space. And for me, the thing that people always, my dad was a professor of quantum physics. So
really?
He's a really smart guy. He's passed on, but he was a very bright guy. And his gift was to take an extraordinarily complicated subject and explain it in a really simple, kind of chunked down way. Chunking is you get information in chunks. So, and I kind of, I would never say that I have the same gift my father had, but I have a similar, my brain works a similar way, and I think I got maybe some of that from him. So I like to talk about subjects that sometimes can be complicated and trying to find a way to explain it in simple language. And that's what I get to do. And that's what this is all about. It's about saying, there's such a huge, there's so many different things you could do. Like, what does it all mean, and where do you actually get started? And so when I get to speak in different places, that's what I get a chance to do for people, which is awesome.
And so it's marketing shortcuts for the self-employed. Have you always been self-employed, Patrick?
I went self-employed in 2002, so I would have been 31 at that time. But I've always done little things on my own. The title, this is interesting. I self-published 2 books, and the second one did reasonably well. Not well by, it sold maybe 10 or 12,000 books. So it's not.
That's good.
But it's not. Good. But it's not a bestseller, right? But it was good enough that Wiley, who's a traditional publisher, this is published by Wiley.
Yes.
They approached me and said, "Let's re-release it." Okay.
Okay.
So they kind of picked the title. Like, I actually think that this is as much for small businesses and even perhaps medium-sized business. It's just guerrilla marketing. But for them, like, remember I said the title is super important? It's the same for Wiley, right? They need a title that niches the book. So they're like, oh, this is for the self-employed. And the funny thing is that when you niche very specifically, people outside of that genre will still pick it up and be interested. Like a small business owner who has maybe 30 employees might see the book and be like, oh, well, maybe I could learn something from this, even though it's targeted for the self-employed. But when you target it in a narrow niche, it's easier to market. So it's really just small business marketing strategies.
Great. And what would you say is the #1 strategy for the self-employed?
#1 strategy, wow. Well, honestly, I would say 2 things. #1, add permanence to everything you do. And I know that's not really marketing, but it's just, always have the objective of trying to add more to overwhelm your opponent, right? I have a Kindle ebook that's coming out. It's called Brute Force, The Ugly Truth Behind Success. And it's all about this concept of you got to put so much up. Like, think about a brick building that's 5 stories tall, right? That building was built 1 brick at a time, right? You see a half a dozen bricks on the side of the road, it's garbage, right? No one even notices it. But when you keep stacking those bricks, you keep putting more and more and more up. It takes time, it takes years, but eventually there's something to look at, right? There's a building there. But no one thought it was anything when you just got started. So, that to me, that's a big lesson in marketing. But the second one is easier, is more what you probably had in mind. Communicate visually.
Okay.
Right?
That's very good. Yeah.
So there's different types of content. There's text, there's audio, there's photos, there's video. Turns out video is by far the most viral, right? It has the highest probability that someone's going to pass it along to their own network. And photos are second. That's why infographics are so popular. You see these infographics with all these statistics and charts. It's information, but it's done in an image format because people know that has a higher likelihood of being passed along. In fact, a blog post with an image gets 94% more views on average than one that doesn't. In fact, there's some interesting statistics. Blog posts formatted as lists, people love lists. So the 7 things, 10 worst mistakes, the 5 questions you must ask, whatever. Blog posts that, let me see if I can remember these. Blog posts that are formatted as lists get, I think it's like twice as many links from other places as blog posts that aren't. If you add an image, it's 3 times as many links, and if you add a video, it's 5 times as many links.
Wow, so video is the way to go.
Yeah, anything visual.
Do you think it's because their attention span has shortened because there's so much happening?
Yeah, I think it's because we're lazy.
That's a nice way of putting it.
I think it's because we're lazy. People, you watch a video. In fact, there was another, I just got all these statistics on slideshare.net. I don't know if you know that platform.
No, I don't.
Well, people can upload PowerPoints, and they actually have you can subscribe, and every week they'll send you an email with the top presentations of the week. It's brilliant.
Wow.
It's brilliant. And you see, so they just had one 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And I have some in the presentation we're going to do later.
Great.
And it was like the 18 internet statistics you must know, or something like that. So I'm just remembering from that. But there was all sorts of these statistics where, like, if you have images or videos, or I know what it was, if you give someone some content in text format, they'll retain like 20% of it. But if you do the same content in video, they'll retain 80% or something. It was crazy. It was
huge difference.
Huge difference. And I know we're doing videos right now, and I'm doing videos for that exact, like, my video blog has had an immediate impact on my business as a speaker. I just started in March. So
And I've seen them.
I know.
I
I
know.
love that you've watched some of these. So
Yeah.
it's very cool.
Well, that's great, Patrick, and thank you so much for being with us tonight. And where can people purchase your book?
It's in all the usual, Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble or whatever. It's on all the usual places.
And if they'd like to hire you as their keynote speaker, where do they go?
My last name's a disaster, right?
Yes, let me see if I can say it again. Short figure.
2 for 2. You're batting 1,000.
Great.
But because it's such a disaster, I got an easier URL, which is just bookpatrick.com.
Perfect.
Bookpatrick.com, and then you can, if you want to find out what I'm doing. But I'm thrilled to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for coming.